Hi, this is Hannah Boroff, and this is my principal interview. I met with Chrissy Cheslock, who is our supervisor of special education at Fort County Career Center. We have several supervisors who basically function as the assistant principals. They have lots of duties. Some of them are over academics. Because I work at a vocational school, some of them are over the vocational trades, and so on and so forth. But Ms. Cheslock is the supervisor of special education. So the first question that I asked Ms. Cheslock was, how do you address the challenges of maintaining compliance with special education services? And this was a big topic of this interview. She really got across that maintaining compliance is something that could create legal issues. She's a big stickler on compliance, so she said it starts with educating everyone on what it means to not be compliant and to explain the consequences of those actions. She also said that staying up to date with the constant changes that the state brings to us is one of the most challenging aspects of her job. We have 22 local schools that we bus in every day, so finding and communicating with these people who are from the local schools can be challenging, but communication is key, and staying in contact with her own staff also, she mentioned, is key as well. The next question that I asked Ms. Cheslock was what the organizational, cultural, and procedural helpers and hindrances may be. And she said that special education is often viewed as a place when in reality it's a service. There's still the view that when you give students what their IEP says, you're making it easy for them or doing their work for them. Or it's often questioned why they're placed in regular classes when they can't do the work that everyone else does. However, the accommodations and modifications are evening the playing field for these students. When these students are properly given these accommodations and modifications, excuse me, it's not making it easier for the students, it's allowing them access to a curriculum that they deserve and can achieve. And I thought that was a really good point. Sometimes as a general educator it can be frustrating when it seems like the student is getting the work done for them, or they're getting help that isn't fair, but it's just evening the playing field. She also mentioned that the compliance and legal part helps to get IEPs implemented. She can't go to bat for someone if they have not been following the IEPs, which are legal documents. It's not optional at that point. It's a legal document, so it has to happen. The next question was, what are the school and community resources that are available to her staff? We have excellent resources in-house that can provide students with an alternative curriculum or supports. Luckily, because we are a vocational school, we're not only state funded, but we're federally funded. So technology has been a huge piece in helping students with disabilities. They can access the materials they need to be successful, and to help with the curriculum and support them so they are successful. Also, our local state support team and ESC provide educational professional development in specific areas to help educators become more familiar, or to put them in touch with outside resources or agencies. Some of those agencies include the Board of DD, BVR, now known as OOD, Medicaid, SSR, and so forth. This is where the conversation got pretty interesting. The next question was, what are the moral and ethical considerations, for instance, justice and care? She said that her job is to make sure students with disabilities are being served and receiving the right services based on their disability. It's tricky though, because each category brings on its own challenges. Each category has different services that are available to the students, so it's important to make sure that each student is getting the services that they need in order to be successful. That doesn't mean each student that qualifies for the same disability gets the same accommodations or modifications, however. One of the best parts, and sometimes what people forget, is that each student needs to be viewed individually, and the IEP created for that student is individual. So no student is alike, and even though they may have the same disability, they may need different services. Ethically, you can't just put things in there that the student doesn't truly need or qualify for. There are strict guidelines, and if we were to be audited, this would be a huge problem. For example, Ms. Cheslock talked about testing. We can't blanket accommodations. If a student doesn't have the need on their ATR that notes reader services, for instance, on a test, that cannot be provided for the student, and it can't just be added in. The same goes for a student struggling in math but didn't qualify. We can't just add a goal or pull them out into special education classroom because they did poorly. The next question was, what are the legal consequences for actions? Immediately she said, this is a loaded question. So she continued to explain, it would depend on what was not compliant. If a student is not given their accommodations or their IEP is not followed, and if they were to fail that class, we would have to reteach the class and provide the student with the instruction that the IEP called for. This is why it's so crucial that everyone is aware of the students on IEPs and follow what they state. Lawsuits, monetary costs, loss of teaching licenses could be the legal repercussions if students were not given the accommodations or modifications that they qualified for. If it's proven that students were not given FAPE, then money comes into consideration, plus having to make things right for the student. So it can become very complicated very fast. ODE could send someone in to do an overhaul of the IEPs. They could provide training. They could force the district to rewrite all the IEPs that were found in noncompliance. So these could be some very serious allegations and legal issues if the school was found to be not in compliance. The last question that I asked Ms. Cheslock was, what professional development opportunities are available for teachers and staff in this field? And she talked about the IEP trainings every year for brand new teachers, as well as refreshers with updates for veteran teachers. Luckily, once again, I think every year I've been at the school, I've had the opportunity to receive professional development. Last year, I went with my co-teacher to Columbus and attended a co-teaching conference there with him and a couple other sets of co-teachers as well from our school. So we have the means to receive the professional development that we need to be successful and to become knowledgeable about this field. There are always professional development opportunities that focus on co-teaching and inclusion, curriculum for students on IEPs, conferences once again, and legal updates. She said, I also like to provide my own professional development for my staff so that they're hearing the messages and the protocol that we will follow from one source so that things are done the same way on the meeting and paperwork parts. So really, it sounded like not only compliance was a huge part of her job, but communicating with her staff, with the local schools, making sure students are receiving the services that they need to become successful are the big parts of her job. And in order to stay out of legal trouble, it's so important to make sure that we're providing the right services to the students and that we are staying within compliance on those issues.